Saybil was once a complete failure, homeless, and with no memory of his past. But fate had a different plan. Deep within him lay the power of an ultimate mage, possessing an unimaginable, boundless source of magic. Saybil's life only truly took a turn on a fateful day. While sheltering from the rain in a dark alley, a beautiful, mysterious woman noticed him. This woman quickly recognized the bright look in the boy's eyes, identical to her own. Thus, she decided to adopt him, taking Saybil to where she believed he belonged, the prestigious magic academy of the Weenas kingdom, which trains elite mages and witches. Before long, I had been living at the academy for 5 years. Ironically, throughout all that time, my only achievement was consistently ranking last, as I was completely unable to use any magic whatsoever. This result led to me being summoned to the principal's office for questioning. On my way there, I encountered a chaotic scene. Outside the office, a small, blonde-haired girl with a stubborn attitude was shouting loudly, repeatedly calling the principal's name and demanding to see her. Since no one paid any attention, and I wouldn't let the girl in, despite her causing a ruckus, she boldly grabbed me, using me as a hostage to threaten others. The girl screamed that if the principal didn't open the door, she couldn't guarantee my safety. Just as the situation was reaching a boiling point, a werewolf named Hold'em suddenly appeared. He swiftly disarmed the blonde girl, causing her precious moonstaff to fly into the air and then fall to the ground, returning to its original form. Seeing this, I kindly bent down to pick it up, but that action nearly landed me in big trouble. Fortunately, the blonde girl and the beast man intervened in time. Otherwise, I might have been erased. The girl immediately burst into tears because her staff had been knocked away like a ball. Just then, the principal's office door burst open. Principal Albus appeared, complaining about the noise outside. Upon seeing the blonde girl, Lou Christus, she frowned, sensing that this girl's appearance always seemed to bring trouble. The principal then turned to me, informing me that I would be participating in a special training program. She explained that if Kudo continued to stay at the academy, I would never progress, so a change of environment was my only chance. The principal recounted the kingdom's background, explaining that we had previously been plunged into fierce battles between wizards and the church, and had only enjoyed peace for a mere 5 years. The northern part of the continent, including Weenas, had begun to accept the existence of wizards and magic. Meanwhile, in the south, they were still considered odd and fearsome creatures. The root cause of this change was the uprising 10 years prior. Led by an evil sorcerer known as Number 13, he had spread magic throughout Weenas, gathering wizards and sorcerers to rebel against oppression, thereby freeing them from being hunted. However, his methods were extremely cruel, causing countless innocent lives to be sacrificed. It was Principal Albus herself who personally ended him. Despite this, Number 13 left a profound impact, somewhat altering people's perception of magic. From that story, the principal established a wizard village in the south, so that those with abilities would no longer be seen as outcasts. This time, I would be sent there, along with other trainees, to improve the image of wizards in the public eye. The principal made it clear that if the village authorities did not recognize them within the next 5 years, I would be sent back, and all memories of the academy and magic would be sealed. Hearing this, Lou Christus exclaimed in admiration of the principal's plan, even volunteering to be the instructor for all of us. Although the principal had arranged for someone else, Lou Christus refused to back down, producing an appointment letter that left the principal both exasperated and resigned. She promised to supervise the children, but stipulated that she wanted to borrow the blank book, which was the first magic book. The principal adamantly refused because it was a forbidden document containing power that could destroy the entire world. However, she also suggested that Lou Christus could visit the village to meet the book's author, the Dark Mud Witch. Lou Christus happily agreed immediately. The next day, I, Lou Christus, and a few others gathered at the city gates to prepare for the journey. The group included the outgoing senior Witchhort and the lizard man Beastkin Kudo, a young man who had traveled widely and was confident he needed no guidance. The group stopped at a restaurant to fill their stomachs. There, Lou Christus introduced the Luden staff, a peculiar weapon that could drain the magic of anyone who touched it, with only she, who had signed a contract, being immune. Among us, I was the only one who suffered from motion sickness, forcing the group to walk. Along the way, we conversed more openly. I revealed that I had lost all my memories before entering the academy, and that this internship was my only chance to prove myself. If I failed, my memories of the academy would also be erased, leaving behind an empty shell of a person. Lou Christus seemed disappointed when I confessed that I could barely use magic. Every time I tried, I couldn't control it. But when I suppressed it, I couldn't activate anything. The Dawn Witch, Lou Christus's nickname, advised me to give up on becoming a mage because the problem was more serious than I thought. Due to the walking, our plan was delayed. The next morning, the group arrived at an inn. While having breakfast, we met 2 other students who had previously traveled with the Lizard Man. These 2 complained that they had been attacked by a gang of bandits last night, and in the midst of danger, the Lizard Man had fled with their map and belongings. Lou Christus immediately became suspicious, reasoning that if he had truly fled out of fear, he would not have taken their belongings, as doing so would only weigh him down. Furthermore, seeing these 2 students healthy and alert, if the bandits wanted to sell them into slavery, they would certainly fetch a higher price. Yet they targeted the Lizard Men, suggesting these were not ordinary bandits, but witch hunters. Lou Christus surmised that the Lizard Men had realized this, so he deliberately took the map to lure them away, sacrificing himself so his friends could retreat. Feeling responsible for letting a team member get separated, Lou Christus decided to go rescue him herself. She strictly forbade me and Hort from following, believing that 2 inexperienced young mages would only get in the way. But, as usual, the more she forbade it, the more we wanted to do the opposite. Hort came up with the idea of using divination magic on the handkerchief Lou Christus had given me when I was carsick to find Lou Christus's location. The 2 of us ventured deep into the forest, while Hort continuously grumbled and cursed the cowardly friend who had abandoned them and refused to help rescue the Lizard Man. In their eyes, it was not their responsibility, so if he died, it wouldn't concern them. Suddenly, in the middle of a puddle of blood, was Kudo's severed lizard tail. Both pale fear surged at the thought that the Lizard Man had been hacked to pieces by their enemy. However, Hort quickly remembered that self-amputation of the tail was a familiar survival method for the species, and that the tail would grow back. Realizing this, they both breathed a sigh of relief while carefully picking up the tail to carry with them in case of emergency. They followed the tracks and quickly discovered footprints imprinted on the ground. 2 sets clearly belonged to Kudo and Lou Christus, while the remaining prints belonged to the attackers. So this time, there was only one opponent. Yet it caused an experienced mage, like Kudo, to abandon his belongings and flee for his life. Hort shivered, trembling as she recalled what she had learned about the judges of Diagnes, a cadre of warriors drawn from death row inmates selected by the church, who specialized in hunting witches at all costs. Although the organization had long been disbanded, Hort still feared that those cold-blooded hunters had never truly disappeared from the world. Hort's fear was not unfounded. In the past, as a child, she had witnessed a lone hunter storm the town she was visiting, slaughtering innocent people and burning everything. He had threatened her that if she were a witch, she would suffer the same fate. Terrified, Hort had fled, abandoning her friend tied to a stake, a haunting memory that stayed with her forever. For this reason, she hesitated, wanting to turn back. But just then, Kudo's desperate cry echoed from deep within the forest. I immediately took Hort's hand, stating firmly that if we continued, it could be a death sentence. But I couldn't stand by and watch our friends be abandoned. That encouragement reignited Hort's courage, dispelling the ghosts of the past and forcing her to change her mind. Kudo was currently hiding on a high branch while the hunters searched frantically, setting traps everywhere. Suddenly, he spotted a wire stretched across the branch. By the time he realized it was a trap, it was too late. The branch snapped, sending him tumbling from the bush. An arrow shot out. Kudo dodged it, only to fall onto sharp stakes on the ground, which pierced his leg. Crawling out of the trap, Kudo cautiously shielded himself, expecting more arrows. But this time, the one who appeared was a notorious judge, who had been pursuing him all night. Kudo struggled, but then horrified to realize that magic had no effect on him. All night, he could only use flashes of light to mislead and flee in desperation. This time, the judge quickly closed in, swinging a massive mace that sent Kudo flying into a tree trunk, causing him to cough up blood. He looked down at the healed wound on Kudo's leg, then laughed maniacally. He had finally found a good deal, so his eyes were filled with greed. If he could capture Kudo alive, a lizard man with extraordinary regenerative abilities, and sell him to researchers in the church, the value would be unimaginable. He called for his subordinates to bring a cage. In despair, dark memories flooded back. Kudo recalled being enslaved, imprisoned in a circus, and tortured daily to showcase his regenerative abilities to a frenzied crowd. That trauma remained deeply ingrained until he escaped, found his way to the academy, and became a powerful wizard. Yet here he was, forced into a cage once more. Kudo gritted his teeth, digging his claws into the roots to hold onto his last shred of freedom. The judge, enraged, smashed his hand. The extreme pain made Kudo scream, but he still bit down on the roots, waiting for his final moment. Just then, a thunderous explosion tore through the space. The trees beside the judge were split in two by a powerful, magical blast. The one who had appeared was Lou Christus, the 100-year-old dawn sorceress. Her Luden staff roared fiercely, charging into attack. The judge only managed to strike the mouth of the staff before breaking out in a cold sweat as he realized the weapon in Lou Christus's hand was the legendary Luden. Lou Christus proudly declared her identity. The judge faltered for a moment but still recklessly charged forward, chopping down the tree Lou Christus was standing on. In response, Lou Christus and Luden swept around, felling the surrounding forest and killing all the judge's mad dogs in an instant. It seemed as though everything was over, but suddenly, the desperate cries of two students echoed. The two had been taken hostage by the judge. Hort immediately recognized him as the one who had spread terror in the town years ago. Her whole body trembled, frozen in place. Lou Christus was furious, threatening that if he dared harm her student, her staff would crush him. The judge sneered and demanded a change in conditions. Lou Christus had to throw Luden down and let him take me as a hostage instead. Faced with her student being strangled, Lou Christus, in pain, had no choice but to comply and threw down her staff. The judge immediately covered Luden with a magic-resistant cloak. Then he ordered me to pick it up and bring it to him. I obediently complied, but surprisingly, the judge called out Hort's name directly. Fear paralyzed Hort as she revealed her secret, that she was a spy planted at the academy by the church. The cruel truth washed over her. Hort remembered her origins. She was born with horns on her head, considered a monster, and sent to the church by her own devout mother. There, they cut off her horns and placed her in an orphanage. Later, they forced her to become a spy, infiltrating the Magic Academy. However, her time at the academy had changed Hort. For the first time, she experienced friendship, camaraderie, and the desire to become a true mage. That's why when she was chosen for this internship, Hort was truly happy. But the church sent the cruel judge, pushing her into an inescapable tragedy. Hort broke down, blaming herself for dragging everyone into danger. But I just smiled, reassuring her that it wasn't her fault. Moved by my kindness, Hort decided to be true to herself for once. She used Kudo's severed tail as a sacrifice, summoning a blue flame that erupted into a dragon, charging straight at the judge. He panicked and immediately snatched the magic-resistant cloak from my hand to shield himself. The cloak blocked the attack, and he coldly advanced towards Hort, preparing to punish her betrayal. But just then, I heard Luden's call. I was compelled to pick up the staff despite Lou Christus's shouts to stop me. The moment I touched it, the staff immediately glowed, drawing in a massive surge of mana from within me, unleashing a terrifying power. Even if I wanted to stop, it was too late. The staff had enveloped the entire area in a giant sphere of light. When the light faded, I awoke to find Hort shielding herself. She cried out, hugging me tightly, overjoyed that I was still alive. However, Lou Christus turned deathly pale with anger. A group of naive students, daring to touch Luden, was akin to courting death. The group continued their journey. Along the way, I wondered why I had touched Luden and survived. Lou Christus revealed a shocking truth. The mana within me was nearly infinite, far exceeding that of normal mages. That was why Luden couldn't completely drain my mana. This was also why I couldn't control my magic all this time. Before they left, Lou Christus warned Kudo that it was best to stay with the group, but he arrogantly refused. Only when she climbed onto his shoulder and pestered him did he reluctantly agree. Ironically, when they decided to return to the forest to find the severed tail, they discovered that Hort had used it as a sacrifice to the dragon's fire. Kudo was speechless, his heart aching, tears welling up in his eyes. As night fell and the atmosphere gradually quieted, Hort and I sat by a secluded stream to share our youthful thoughts. Meanwhile, in the distance, the lizard man and the dwarf old woman Lou Christus had found a small inn to rest after their long journey. In that peaceful atmosphere, Hort decided to remove the hat that always concealed her biggest secret. As her hair cascaded down, revealing the horns beneath the moonlight, she gathered her courage to tell me the story of her past. Because of these horns, throughout her childhood, she had been ostracized, despised, and shunned by the harsh gazes of others. However, thanks to what she learned at the academy, along with Lou Christus's confirmation, Hort finally understood her true identity. She was a fallen beastkin, A creature formed when a witch empowered a beast warrior. When both the witch and the beast warrior died, the beast's soul remained within the witch's bloodline, and their descendants subsequently gave birth to fallen beastkin like her. After pouring out her heart, Hort, touched, gave me a light kiss on the cheek as thanks for trusting and accepting her. Immediately after, she hastily fled, leaving me with a still bewildered expression. As soon as Hort left, the dwarf witch suddenly appeared beside me, scolding me for being young and naive, criticizing me for not seizing the opportunity when it was so clearly offered. The next morning, terrible news arrived. 2 of our party members had been apprehended for leaking information to the church. To put it plainly, they were spies. From then on, only 4 of us continued the journey towards the witch village. Before setting off, the old dwarf guided Kudo to heal his arm, as a wounded warrior was useless. She even sarcastically remarked that an arm wasn't a banana leaf that could regrow at will. Lucristus comforted him, saying that there were charging stations here, so there was no need to worry about mana deficiency. During their discussion, the old dwarf suggested that the most effective way to transfer mana was through a kiss, but she was immediately dismissed by Hort, who deemed it an indecent idea. Finally, they agreed that skin-to-skin contact, such as holding hands, was sufficient for magical transmission. However, if things went beyond control, Kudo might absorb too much energy, leading to an explosion and death. To prevent the danger, the old dwarf decided to act as a supervisor. She held the hands of both young men, transferring the magical flow from me to Kudo. In just a moment, thanks to the healing spell, Kudo's lost arm and tail rapidly regrew. Those around who witnessed this spectacle were astonished. Lucristus was very excited, calling everyone to sing and dance together to celebrate the power of magic. Leaving there, they arrived at a large town. A careless carriage sped by, splashing mud all over me, making me look utterly pathetic. To comfort her disciple, Lucristus led the group to a familiar inn. There was a spacious public bathhouse, perfect for relaxation. As Kudo and I soaked in the warm water, Kudo shared the true reason why he yearned to become a magician. He recounted that in the past, he was treated like a circus animal, paraded around for entertainment. Just then, a terrible catastrophe erupted in the north. A mad sorceress plotted to destroy the world. Kudo somehow miraculously survived and was rescued by the Demon King. At that time, fallen beastmen were considered symbols of impurity. Hybrid creatures were scorned by society. Yet, while everyone looked down on him, only that hero smiled with relief, knowing Kudo was alive. From then on, he harbored a dream of joining the church's magical legion, becoming as strong and noble as his savior. The next stage of the journey was surprisingly smooth. Wherever they went, the group was recognized, and everyone warmly welcomed Lucristus. Lucristus, with her experience, always knew where to fish and where to rest properly. She taught the young ones survival skills in nature, as well as how to use magic to help others, things the Academy never taught. Thanks to Luden's magic, Lucristus had survived for 300 years. Her body was powered by magic. Needing no food, no sleep, and being immortal, she had no desire for love or childbirth. That long life had become monotonous. Therefore, anything exciting, especially dramatic events involving the world's survival, she prioritized above all else. Suddenly, a boy ran up in a panic, frantically reporting that this place was not safe. The boy tugged at Lucristus's hand, leading the group to a hollow tree and then erecting a perfect concealment barrier. Unfortunately, the barrier could only hide their appearance, not their sounds. Soon after, a mercenary appeared, relentlessly pursuing them. Having lost track of the boy, he threatened loudly, saying that if the boy didn't come out, he would dislocate every joint in his body. Thanks to the rapid heartbeat, he quickly discovered the people hiding in the hollow tree and then swung his sword, breaking the barrier. The boy tumbled out, and my group could no longer hide. The mercenary warned them not to foolishly use magic, as his speed was certainly faster than any incantation. In a dangerous situation, Lucristus chose to stay behind to distract, while ordering the children to leave quickly. Lucristus faced the enemy, confidently provoking him. The Tiger Man understood that turning his back on Lucristus at that moment was tantamount to suicide. Through his speech, Lucristus realized he knew quite a lot about the Luden magic staff, about the internship, and about the witch village. Finally, he decided to retreat, realizing he couldn't win. However, he still warned Lucristus that if she continued to lead the children to the village, they would face disaster. At the same time, the rest of the group had safely brought the boy to the village church. Outside the door, a blindfolded parish priest was waiting. The boy Lily ran into his arms, excitedly boasting that these people had saved him. The priest not only knew about the incident, but also quickly recognized them all as witches. Not only the priest, but it seemed the entire village knew about the arrival of the interns. When asked about the humanoid beasts that attacked the edge of the forest, he calmly declared that they were the guards used by the witch to control this village. With a weary tone, the priest stated that our presence would bring no change, and bluntly asked the group to leave. He reiterated that 2 years ago the supervisor from the academy had abandoned the village to invaders and disappeared without a trace. Since that day, that witch has comfortably taken control, and the villagers are no longer able to resist. Hearing this, I suddenly realized that our internship group was entirely composed of outcasts from the academy. A spy, a rebellious fallen beastkin, and myself, the one at the bottom of the class. Ostensibly, we were sent for an internship, but in reality, we were being subtly expelled under the guise of not completing the internship. Kudo wondered why the villagers didn't seek help from the church's magic corps, but the priest merely gave a cold laugh, asserting that the Night Corps would never save a witch's village. Just as the group was perplexed, Lucristus suddenly appeared like a phantom, scolding the trainees for being too trusting. Meanwhile, there was no evidence suggesting the priest wasn't in league with the tiger in the forest. When the priest asked why, if she suspected him, she didn't kill him from the start. Lucristus calmly replied that she enjoyed watching people find every excuse to justify their lies. Finally, to avoid further argument, she asked the priest to lead the group on a tour of the village. Wanting to see the locals' reactions for himself before deciding whether to believe him, the priest reluctantly agreed, and so the group was led back to the training village where Lily's father was anxiously awaiting his son's safe return. As soon as he saw his father, the boy ran into his arms, and the father repeatedly thanked the group. Afterward, he led us around the village, telling stories as we walked. He mentioned that the previous supervising witch was actually a good person, which Kudo couldn't help but question. If she was truly good, why did she abandon the village to invaders? Even the father admitted he didn't understand the reason. The villagers now hide in their homes, obeying the witch's orders to stay away from strangers. After walking for a while, they stopped before a dilapidated, creaking house. 4 straw effigies with the appearance of being executed hung before the house, swaying in the wind. A chillingly eerie sight. The father explained that these were the punishments the witch imposed on a few who had dared to try and escape, only to be caught and brutally killed. Their straw effigies then hung as a warning to anyone else who might consider leaving the village. She was indeed cruel, but as long as the villagers obediently followed her commands, they could live in peace. Upon returning to their temporary home, Lucristus angrily decided to deal with the witch and, in passing, settle the matter with the scheming principal. Hort suggested returning to the royal capital to seek help, believing the magic corps would listen, but I immediately objected, arguing that we couldn't turn the village into a bloody battlefield just for graduation and that we needed to resolve the immediate problem ourselves. The lizard man grew impatient, believing we stood no chance of winning. A witch who could command a warrior as strong as the mercenary, just confronting her would be suicide. Better to end it all yourself. I gritted my teeth in rebuttal, stating that I couldn't accept that because once I held the staff in my hand, I no longer feared death. But Hort still trembled with fear, unwilling to admit it. I looked at her gently, telling her that if she didn't want to, Hort and the lizard man could leave, while the teacher and I would fight to the end. Hearing this, Hort's eyes welled up with tears as she cried out in despair. She said that what she feared was not death, but the haunting thought of losing me forever. Those words stunned me. Unable to comprehend what situation had made, Hort burst into tears and ran away. I intended to chase after her to apologize, but was held back by the teacher, who said that apologizing without understanding what one did wrong would only hurt the girl more. Even the lizard man, realizing Hort was heartbroken that she saw me as a true friend, and she didn't want to lose any more friends. Finally, I came to my senses and rushed to find Hort. Meanwhile, Hort had arrived at the church, where she encountered a girl sweeping, covered from head to toe. Seeing Hort cry, the girl gently comforted her, but before she could say anything more, the priest suddenly appeared, ordering the girl away in a harsh tone. Hort was surprised he knew about her argument with her friends. She confessed honestly and was about to apologize to the group, but her eyes suddenly landed on the priest's staff, which bore the emblem of the D-Day Judges Association. In an instant, Hort realized he was from the church. Unfortunately, it was too late as steel wires tightened around her body. The priest coldly transformed, drawing a razor-sharp scythe from his staff and placing it on Hort's neck, preventing her from crying for help. He coldly threatened that if she wanted to live, she should continue to be a spy. At the same time, I returned empty-handed, finding no trace of Hort, my heart filled with anxiety. Lou Christus decided to use a tracking spell, and the trail led them to a gloomy cave in the forest. Looking down at the ground, the group shivered at the sight of bloodstains. Lou Christus frowned, clearly sensing many enemies inside. Kudo immediately demanded a retreat, certain it was a trap, but Lou Christus boldly declared that if invited, guests must attend. Lou Christus swung his Luden staff to shatter the trap momentarily, but couldn't restrain a panicking Kudo. Lou Christus tried his best to encourage him to recall his dream of graduating the academy, joining the Magic Corps, and becoming a legend like the Dragon Slayer King. However, Kudo chose cowardly flight, turning his back and leaving. As soon as he exited the cave, he was confronted by the mercenary. The tiger sneered, tempting him to join his side. Then, he spoke cruel words that he had eaten Hort, who tasted as delicious as she looked beautiful. Upon hearing this, Kudo immediately flew into a rage, his body turning blue and red as he plunged into a fight to the death. Meanwhile, in the cave, I accidentally emitted magical light, even summoning a light that dazzled Lou Christus. She was angry, but then admitted that any witch would dream of having an intern with an infinite source of magical power like me. Those words suddenly plunged me into dark memories, causing me to collapse in pain. Lou Christus advised me to retreat, but I was determined that as long as Hort could be saved, I feared nothing. Just then, a giant tentacle stretched out from a door inside the cave, wrapped tightly around me, and dragged me away. Lou Christus rushed to my rescue, but the Luden staff was also pulled away by steel wires. The priest revealed himself, kicked Lou Christus into a dark room, and coldly said that she should have killed him from the beginning. The door closed, and then, in the blue light, I noticed another girl, standing there, emitting a brilliant aura amidst the thick darkness. Witnessing the appearance of the strange woman, I immediately recognized her as the one who had saved me from my previously aimless and dark life. The elder sister extended her hand, her eyes full of expectation, then said that she had been waiting for me for a long time. Before I could wonder or ask questions, Lou Christus quickly intervened, rushing to stop me, as she feared that with just a glance, the woman could manipulate and control me. Clearly, the elder sister had no good intentions towards Lou Christus either. With just a snap of her fingers, Lou Christus was immediately thrown backward, falling unconscious to the ground. The woman expressed her disappointment at seeing me once again surrounded by those she considered ignorant and failures, who were only concerned with the magical potential within me. She threw down a blood-stained hat, saying it belonged to Hort, which sent me into a panic, and I screamed, asking what she had done to my friend. She calmly replied that she had let a mercenary eat that girl. That answer was like a blast directly into my mind, leaving me stunned, my heart pounding wildly. Not stopping there, the older sister continued to reveal that she had struggled from controlling the village to arranging all the incidents, all for the sole purpose of taking me back from the principal. Hearing that, I suddenly realized that all the suffering and loss that so many people had endured were directly related to my own existence. A series of fragmented, painful memories suddenly flooded back, causing me to collapse on the spot. The older sister, who claimed to be a witch, did not give up, continuing to entice and try to pull me to her side to go together to a world she thought was more suitable. But I shook my head resolutely. I said that the simple, happy days with my friends were the most precious things in life, because they never saw me as a failure or worthless. What is suitable, what is not, I will decide for myself. And certainly among the things I need, her existence is not one of them. For a moment, I intended to unleash all my magic, focusing on a decisive blow to both rescue Lou Christus and stop that dangerous woman. But before I could finish chanting the spell, Lou Christus suddenly woke up and unexpectedly hugged me, giving me a long kiss. When she pulled away, Lou Christus smiled and said that my body was now filled with magic. Lou Christus immediately recited the familiar spell I had used to punish the judge in the forest earlier. From the overflowing stream of magic, a giant 5-colored dragon appeared, looking majestic, and charged straight at the older sister. But it all became meaningless. She merely waved her hand, and all the magic was dissolved in an instant. Amidst the dissipating smoke, the older sister laughed proudly, boasting that she was the creator of that magic. Therefore, using it against her would be foolish. She introduced herself as the Dark Mud Witch Zero, who had compiled the blank book, the mysterious tome containing all magical knowledge. Hearing this, I understood that in this life, our master-disciple bond had ended. Zero approached me, but surprisingly, Instead of launching a fatal blow, she made the entire room explode in a brilliant confetti shower. She playfully teased me and announced that from now on, she would officially be my supervisor. Throughout the internship, I remained bewildered, unsure how to react, to the point where everyone was stunned into silence by Zero's sudden appearance and overwhelming presence. Lucristus had to explain that this was merely a test, and that I had successfully passed this difficult trial. At the same time, Hort also arrived, much to my relief to see my busty friend was still alive. She ran to hug me tightly, and everything began to become clear. All the villagers were initially involved in a plan to test us. Every detail, every challenge, everything had been meticulously arranged. The priest who had threatened Hort was actually just a part of the act. When he pressured her to continue pretending to be a spy, she spat directly in his face. That one small action was enough for her to pass her section. He got angry, hit her once, and then returned her staff while asking Lucristus if she had realized it was a test from the beginning. Brew calmly nodded, stating that a clean house with full amenities couldn't have been abandoned for 2 years. That was clear proof. Immediately after, Kudo and the mercenary also entered. It turned out they had also overcome their own trials, bringing immense joy to the lizard man who hugged his friends tearfully. The entire group was safe, having survived the grueling test. The villagers held a grand celebratory feast, congratulating the young mages and witches for passing the exam. During the wine banquet, Zero once again congratulated the trainees. Hort curiously asked why they were chosen. Zero explained that because they were all exceptionally outstanding students, far beyond ordinary people, their character needed to be thoroughly tested. Because if such talented individuals chose the path of darkness, they would undoubtedly become a terrible catastrophe for humanity. Zero assessed Hort as someone who could surpass even the Crescent Valley, the current principal, within 2 decades. As for Kudo, she believed that if he developed and honed his resilience, he would inevitably become an immortal mage sooner or later. And regarding me, Zero confessed that I was the only one whose potential limits she couldn't fathom. With an inexhaustible source of magic, I could live for centuries, enough time to refine and achieve a power that could pierce anything. Of course, the prerequisite was still diligent practice. Finally, Zero moved on to the official announcement of the internship plan. Each member of the group would have their name on a shop in the village and receive roses from the villagers. Just as she was about to speak more seriously, the mercenary and the priest interrupted, luring the children with an appealing tray of food. After the banquet, the group returned to their shared house. That night, they were surprised to see a man riding a dragon fly across the moonlight. The lizard man almost went crazy when he immediately recognized his idol, the Dragon Emperor, had appeared. The whole group rushed to chase the dragon's silhouette. When it landed, the Dragon Emperor approached and handed them a letter from the academy. The contents of the letter stunned everyone. The official principal granted the trainees the right to use unlimited magic as if they were graduates. This meant they were eligible to participate in real battles. Returning, the group recounted the events to Hort. Hearing the news, she deeply regretted missing the opportunity to see a dragon up close. She complained loudly, saying that next time she would definitely not be in the village. The group heard this, and their faces fell sadly. Lucristus comforted them, saying she would stay for a long time to read through Zero's library, so she wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. Hearing this, the children cheered up again. It wasn't until late at night, with only Dawn and Zero left, that the conversation took a different tone. Zero confessed that she was severely depleted of magic, and that perhaps the reason she had brought me closer was the inexhaustible magic within me. Zero then recounted my painful past to Dawn. I had witnessed my mother being killed by a sorceress right before my eyes, my magic stolen, and even the thief died in agony from absorbing too much. Those haunting memories caused me to seal away a part of my mind, living in limbo throughout my childhood. That's why when Zero found me, she brought me to the academy to give me a chance to start over. However, they also realized that if I were to accidentally unleash all my uncontrollable magic one day, I could self-destruct. So bringing me to this place was also for observation. Dawn immediately questioned Zero, asking what right she had to control my life. In response, Zero calmly revealed a shocking secret. I am her grandson, the son of the notorious sorceress number 13, who stole the blank book and used it to sow war. Time flies, and it has been over 2 months since the start of my internship in the village. That period is not too long, but it is enough for us to gradually settle into our new lives. Each of us, through our own efforts and abilities, has found a small niche in the village. After days of learning and practical experience, Hort has now become a versatile mage, capable of meeting most of the villagers' needs, from daily chores to more serious magical requests. The villagers gradually became familiar with her, and whenever they needed help, they came to her with trust. Kudo, with his expertise in healing, didn't take long to establish his position. He was hired as an assistant by a local clinic, becoming an invaluable asset to the doctors there. Each day that passed, Kudo witnessed the patient's pain and then saw them gradually recover thanks to his healing magic, which brought him a quiet but profound sense of pride. Meanwhile, I chose to open a shop in my home, supplying magic power to those who needed it. My most loyal customers were none other than my two companions. Each time I transferred magic power, it felt like floating on clouds, like using opium. After my two friends went to work, I began to get used to playing a supportive role, gradually accepting the rhythm of life at home. I took care of the housework, maintaining the home, which also served as the group's charging station whenever they returned from missions. For me, it was also a way to contribute, to feel useful. However, when the Dawn Witch visited, she was not pleased with the reclusive, completely introverted lifestyle of the young man. She lovingly scolded me, saying that I would soon stagnate in this way, wasting my youth. I smiled, saying that I felt fine because people still needed someone to handle the magic. And if I didn't do the housework, no one would lift a finger. Deep down, I still thought of it as a responsibility, a way to prevent myself from falling into emptiness, something I feared remembering Zero's words. Seeing this, Luke Christus was touched. Recalling my past, she couldn't help but feel pity for the young man. She pulled up a chair, hugged me, her voice much gentler. In her eyes, I was no different from a young bird that needed wings to fly far, not to stay in a cage forever. Therefore, she decided to find a way to push the young man out of the house to give me a chance to step outside. She gave me a simple task: go pick some tea leaves for her. On the way, I ran into Lily, hearing me say I wanted to find tea leaves. The boy eagerly offered to lead the way because he knew exactly where the best tea leaves were. So the two of us ventured deep into the forest. From afar, I saw it and appeared worried. The deep forest was no safe place for a boy without protection. But before my warning could reach him, Lily sulked, "Run!" and climbed a tree to hide. I called and called, telling him to come down. But Lily only mumbled a confession that he had tried to act cool, pretend to know everything, only to get them both lost in the end. I sighed softly, then gently led the boy to find their way back. While fumbling, Lily suddenly discovered a mouse gnawing on my pant leg. It was Lily's familiar pet. The boy rejoiced, saying the animal would surely lead them. So they hurried after it, and indeed, not long after, both returned to the church safely. The first scene was Lily's mother waiting. She flew into a rage, scolded her son, then pinched his ear and dragged him inside. Behind me, a tall figure appeared, the priest, with a cold face but burning energy. He invited me into the church for tea and cakes. Inside, Lily was also present. Immediately, the priest asked the girl to take off her hat to speak properly, but Lily firmly refused, afraid of scaring the guest. He didn't listen, and suddenly snatched the girl's hat. The mouse ears were revealed, making Lily extremely embarrassed, wishing she could find a hole to crawl into. However, the priest remained calm, telling her not to make a fuss and to quickly prepare food. When the food was served, the priest turned to scold me soundly for daring to venture into the dangerous deep forest just to find tea leaves when there were plenty around Zero's house. However, he also encouraged me, saying that traveling to many places and gaining much experience would help me grow up, instead of hiding at home forever. Leaving the church, I met Hort. She was surprised to see me willing to go out and gently wiped away the food stain on the corner of my mouth, but my eyes immediately caught sight of the blood stain on her sleeve. Hort quickly explained that it wasn't her blood, but that of a mercenary when she and he went into the forest to kill wild wolves. In reality, Hort was so scared during that battle that she didn't have time to cast spells. A mercenary had to stand up to protect her and was injured. The feeling of helplessness overwhelmed her, causing Hort to burst into tears. Lily, passing by, saw this, came to comfort her, and led her away. Luke Christus, who had been secretly watching from beginning to end, stepped out, called me back, and said someone needed my magic. We immediately went to Zero's, who was busy staunching the mercenary's bleeding, without a second thought. As soon as he saw his grandson, Zero rushed to kiss the young man to replenish his magic, then used advanced healing magic on the mercenary. The results were miraculous. The mercenary's body recovered almost instantly, feeling light all over. But the first words he uttered were not thanks, but jealousy. He was annoyed to see Zero so close to the young man, Meanwhile, I was worried if Hort's accident would cause her to be negatively judged. But both Zero and the mercenary reassured me that it wasn't enough to get expelled. The mercenary sternly instructed that they must cooperate better next time. I suddenly remembered Lily and hurried to find the boy to give him another chance to go into the forest with me. Zero now understood that Lou Christus had deliberately set up a plan, ordering her grandson to do chores to lure me out of the house. Lou Christus complained that she didn't like the young man Saybil locking himself up within 4 walls. But Zero and the mercenary found it normal. Being able to do whatever one wanted was also a type of happiness. When they were alone, Lou Christus seriously asked why Zero only took a little magic from me. While it was clear she needed much more, Zero replied that as my relative and guardian, she couldn't demand too much, as it would be exploiting the boy. Lou Christus snapped, saying that if it continued like this, Zero would gradually grow old and die. But Zero just smiled, sighing softly. For her, living a normal life, experiencing old age, and then one day dying beside the one she loved was true happiness. Meanwhile, Kudo was also having trouble at work. He went to a nearby village to treat those suffering from a plague. Overly eager and excited, he used all his strength to heal all the patients at once, resulting in complete exhaustion and him collapsing on the spot. The clinic director had to carry him back. When he woke up in the familiar room, Kudo, not yet fully coherent, asked who the next patient was. He went downstairs and heard his friends recount the whole incident, making him feel both embarrassed and regretful. However, he quickly realized that Hort had caused even bigger problems than he had, so the two of them had a loud argument. Fortunately, Lou Christus appeared in time, sternly reminding them that if they truly wanted to avoid repeated troubles, they needed to work harder and be more responsible. Finally, she announced that the next day, the whole group would have to meet Zero. The next day, they all went to Zero's house and were immediately overwhelmed by the enormous book collection. Zero explained that the books displayed in the room were only ordinary ones, while all the forbidden books were hidden in a secret library to the north. Upon hearing this, everyone couldn't hide their excitement and discussed visiting it. However, I immediately objected. After the recent war, the north was still filled with chaotic ruins and aggressive monsters. It was clearly not suitable for a leisurely trip. The place was so dangerous that a single surprise attack would be enough to claim a life. Therefore, I decided to completely cancel my friend's plan. However, Hort remained confident, believing that with her endless magic, coupled with the team's coordinated attack and recovery abilities, they would be invincible. Conversely, Kudo did not have much faith. In his eyes, a mage who had accidentally attacked her teammate and someone who easily exhausted herself to the point of fainting while saving others could hardly be a reliable support. As that tense atmosphere spread, Zero suddenly became different. She said sternly that she had prepared a special lesson for Hort and emphasized that she would not let Hort return until she mastered this new type of magic. Zero immediately pulled Hort away, while I happened to find an interesting book on the shelf. The training began with Zero asking Hort to practice a dragon-shaped attack magic. Previously, Hort had performed quite well, so Zero seemed satisfied. This time, she presented a new challenge, forcing Hort to use a single spell to light all the candles in the room. Hort immediately failed, trembling and bursting into tears as she realized she didn't have enough magic power to sustain such a heavy spell. Zero demonstrated using only an amount of magic equal to what Hort was asked to use, but achieved many times the effect. She took that opportunity to further explain how to control and use magic effectively. However, before her lecture ended, Zero suddenly collapsed. Her magic power was completely depleted, causing her students to panic and rush to her aid. I tried to transfer energy to her, but all efforts were in vain. For a moment, I even thought of repeating what I had done before, but Zero shook her head, saying it wouldn't work this time. Although she tried to stand up and declare that all she needed was a hearty meal to recover, she immediately fell down again. I hurried to help her up, and my concerned attitude reminded Zero of her brother. I brought her into the room and tried to transfer magic multiple times, but all attempts failed. Zero gently told me to stop, as if she really wanted to. Draining my magic would be an easy task. However, my gaze fell upon Zero's eyes that were exactly like her brother's. I blurted out if she knew anything about my mother, but Zero replied that she knew nothing about my mother. Although, regarding my father, she knew more than anyone. I never thought I had a father, but before I could ask more, Zero directed me to the book I brought from the library. When I expressed my intention to go to the forest to find herbs and plan to use the book for research, Zero laughed, saying it would be extremely difficult because the writing in it was both messy and hard to read. However, I found it perfectly normal, and even understood most of it because my own handwriting was no less terrible. My father was a rare genius, and the secrets within that book could probably only be deciphered by me. The mercenary then rushed in with food. As soon as he saw me, he immediately thanked me for bringing Zero back in time. Otherwise, the situation could have been much worse. I felt guilty for not being able to channel mana to help her, but Zero immediately realized this and decided to tell me something important. She directly asked if I wanted to become a mana-providing magic user or step onto the path of a true mage. If I only chose the first option, this village would have nothing else to help me progress further. Zero advised me to think carefully. I took the book into the forest with Lily. We walked and studied, and I quickly realized that the book contained a lot of valuable knowledge. After a while, we came across the corpse of a deer that had just been attacked by wolves. Before we could look away, a forest of brilliant red flowers appeared before our eyes. It was indeed the species we were looking for. Lily couldn't hide her joy and immediately ran into the middle of the flower forest. While I instinctively felt uneasy, a bad premonition made my heart beat faster. And indeed, I was right. A strange creature emerged from the flower forest. I screamed for Lily to get down, but it was too late. The monster gathered its strength and fired a volley of thorns like a rain of arrows. I was injured in many places, but what horrified me the most was that Lily had also been hit hard. He fell unconscious, his breath weak. I tried to chant a healing spell, but as always, I couldn't succeed. In despair, I could only hold Lily and run back to the village. The throbbing pain made my consciousness fade. I blamed myself for neglecting my training, only relying on others. In that despair, a voice echoed in my head. It was Lou Christus's voice, through Luden's magic raven, which had found me. Lou Christus ordered me not to give up, to keep running, because Zero was on her way. If I ran fast, Lily still had a chance to survive. I gritted my teeth and stood up, using all my remaining strength to run towards the village. Finally, I met Zero and the mercenary group. I burst into tears, repeatedly apologizing for not being able to heal Lily. The mercenary comforted me, saying I had done my best. Lou Christus also quickly arrived, insisting that Zero use his blood as a conduit to save the boy. Without hesitation, Lou Christus cut his wrist, causing blood to flow like a stream, and Zero immediately applied high-level healing magic. Thanks to this, Lily escaped the Grim Reaper's scythe. They took each other to the clinic. Kudo rushed to treat them, but he was also exhausted. I described the monster's appearance, leading Lou Christus to immediately recognize it as a type of beast created by demons. This species often disguises itself as animal carcasses to lure prey, then uses thorns to suck blood, and afterward evolves into a new form. They are called flower syringes. Normally, they only appear in the north, but this time they were seen in the south. Clearly, someone was intentionally spreading danger. Zero immediately sent Kudo and the mercenary to investigate, but as soon as they opened the door, they found Holda blocking their way, saying he had come to check on the situation. Afterward, they went to the church to discuss with the priest. There were rumors that someone was collecting relics from old disasters, selling them on the black market at high prices. Although there was no evidence, the appearance of monsters in the forest made this rumor even more suspicious. The priest decided to take Lily along to investigate. Well, the mercenary had to go to the neighboring village to warn them. If both went, the village would be left unprotected. Finally, the responsibility of protecting the place was entrusted to Hold'em, despite his reluctance. Meanwhile, Zero unexpectedly demanded to accompany the mercenary. He tried to persuade her to stay, as she had just depleted her magic and going now would only be a burden. But the mercenary eventually relented and let Zero accompany her. A while later, the werewolf appeared at the hospital and complained that he was only assigned to inspect, but was reluctantly tasked with protecting the village. After speaking, he chased the students away to be alone with Lou Christus. At that time, Lou Christus frankly asked him to clarify because the timing of his appearance in the village and the discovery of the monster was an unbelievable coincidence. But if he had intended to destroy the village, he would have done so from the beginning, rather than beating around the bush. For the time being, Lou Christus chose to trust him, while the werewolf asked if she had any way to deal with the ruins, as she was the only witch her master trusted. Those words brought back memories for Lou Christus of a childhood friend who sacrificed herself to protect everyone, making her believe that person would also want her to continue carrying the mission of protecting the village. Lou Christus accepted the mission, but did not forget to demand payment. The werewolf replied that he would ask the principal for permission for her to read the blank book, which made Lou Christus overjoyed. After the incident in the forest, I decided to become a true mage and resolved to practice. I asked 2 friends to teach me magic, and in return I would restore their magic power. Both agreed, with Holy especially expressing her desire to be charged with magic through kisses. I naively refused. Just then, the werewolf passed by looking for an inn to rest, and I agreed to lead him there. The werewolf tried to remain calm, because he was afraid that if he was caught going to an inn with a young girl, the village population would soon increase. The remaining 3 girls sternly demanded to file a complaint with the principal, claiming he was a perverted guard. Meanwhile, an uncle appeared, wanting to speak to me privately. This uncle knew that I was not the cause of his son's injury, and had even saved Lily, but he still didn't want me to go near his son again. After speaking, he left, leaving me alone. Just then, I was suddenly attacked from behind. The attacker was none other than the cruel judge we had met in the forest. He strangled me, knocked me unconscious, then put a sack over my head, threw me into a carriage, and drove straight into the dark forest. In the darkness, I heard a woman's voice asking how long I intended to hide my true nature. Buried traumatic memories flooded back. I saw my mother hiding me in a closet and warning me never to go near the witch who looked exactly like me, for she would take everything. My mother locked the door, but a sudden explosion shook the entire house. A power-hungry witch appeared, demanding loudly that I come out or my mother would die. I left the closet, but she broke her promise, directly killing my mother before my eyes, shattering the young boy's soul. She grabbed me, intending to steal my magic. She thrust her hand through my chest to drain my magic, but as soon as she absorbed enough, before she could push me away, I clenched her hand, causing the amount of power to exceed the limit and backfire. She struggled, but it was too late. Her body melted like mud. I screamed, escaping the nightmare, but immediately received a slap from the judge for being noisy. He informed me that this time the order was to capture me alive, so he couldn't torture me as he wished. Just then, a call sounded from afar as Kudo and Hort galloped towards them. The 2 jumped down in front of me and, seeing the judge there, they had to fight. Kudo cut off his tail and gave it to Hort to use as a conduit for summoning. Hort successfully summoned a blue dragon with magic, without needing to recite incantations. The dragon charged straight at the judge, catching him by surprise, while the blue fire also cut through my restraints without harming me. The judge prepared to counterattack, but I closed in, threatening him to stay put if he didn't want to die immediately. Meanwhile, Lou Christus was busy cleaning up monster remnants in the forest. She directed Luden to take action. While she leisurely observed, Luden spread out everywhere, collecting sharp fragments and swallowing them. On her way back, she encountered a man whose face was disfigured by bee stings, so she took him back to the village. On the way, she saw the werewolf lying unconscious at the gate, woke him up and asked why. He recalled that someone had reported my kidnapping. 2 students wanted to go rescue me immediately, but as he tried to stop them, he was hit by a sleep spell and fell right on the road. He was worried that the students were in danger, but the teacher had foreseen everything, saying this was surely the principal's plan to test the students' adaptability. The werewolf had to admit that. However, he was concerned, because the one used this time was that brutal judge. Back to the fight, the judge used his iron head to hit me, causing a lump on my head and delivering more heavy blows that left both my arms aching while the other 2 were also taken down. Seeing this, he believed the mission was successful, as injuries of this magnitude could still be healed. But surprisingly, his hammer-wielding hand was severed, and his body was constricted by threads that appeared out of nowhere. He realized this was the technique of the blindfolded priest, who was supposed to have left the village. The priest emerged from the shadows, explaining that the mouse in the church had informed him, so he had returned in time. He extinguished all the oil lamps, and as the moonlight was obscured, he removed his blindfold. The priest acted ruthlessly, cutting off both of the judge's legs, all the while stating that they could still be restored with magic. Zero and the mercenary immediately rushed forward, fearing the priest would chop the enemy into pieces, but fortunately, he stopped in time. Lou Christus and the werewolf also appeared, witnessing the students' battered state. Zero angrily questioned the werewolf, causing him to panic and hide behind the teacher. Zero threatened that he would either tell the truth or face punishment. Finally, the werewolf had to admit that the judge had been tasked with bringing back a student alive to escape the death penalty. While the real purpose was to test the village's ability to protect witches, everyone blamed the werewolf for his incompetence. But Zero pointed out that the village's defenses were too obvious, which was why the judge could infiltrate so easily. The mercenary and the priest assessed that the village's fighting force was still insufficient, and once dispersed, it would reveal even more weaknesses. They admitted that the witches were involved, and if they couldn't protect them, their reputation would be ruined forever. Meanwhile, the werewolf came up with an idea for Zero to use the judge. The judge vehemently objected, claiming this was beyond their agreement, but the werewolf threatened that he had already broken his prior promise, so if he wanted to live, he had to comply. Zero accepted the proposal. The next day, when this was announced to the students, there was an immediate backlash. The girl insisted that the judge was untrustworthy and demanded his execution. Zero replied that if she truly wanted revenge, she could have it, but hatred would only create a vicious cycle. The judge had committed many sins, but now had a chance to atone by protecting the village. However, the girl was still angry because he had killed too many people. The priest intervened, saying that when he served the church, he too had killed countless people on orders, and Ruiz Luden had also consumed countless lives. Under everyone's pressure, she burst into tears but finally agreed on the condition that the judge would live under the supervision of the two Tiger brothers, and she herself would have command over him during that time. The next day, before leaving the village, the werewolf expressed his desire for Lou Christus to accompany him to the Forbidden Library in the north, but she refused as she still had to supervise the students on this trip. The werewolf reluctantly left. When Lou Christus returned, she overheard Hort and me talking. I said my memories had returned, though they were unpleasant and still felt alien. Moreover, remembering them didn't help much. With an infinitely negative ego, I found it difficult to comprehend human emotions, especially love. I mentioned that someone had said Hort seemed to like me, which made Hort blush. I then curiously asked what love felt like, and Hort replied that when you like someone, you want to be special to them. I naively said that in that case, Hort was special to me too, making Hort realize I had misunderstood. Then I suddenly remembered and said that perhaps I liked Lou Christus more, which made Hort a bit sad, but she still patiently advised me. Hort asked to charge magic for the morning, but the horrific memories made my hands stiff. I fled in confusion to find Zero. At Zero's home, I was reassured and offered tea. I explained that my memories had returned, though I didn't know why. Zero believed this was dangerous, but also proof that I was gradually maturing, no longer an empty shell. Zero advised me to confront my memories and become stronger to protect everyone. I also revealed my mother's warning that I should stay away from a witch who had eyes like mine. Zero smiled, her eyes gleaming as she revealed the truth. These special eyes were inherited from her father, who was also the father of number 13. That person was the witch number 13, Zero's brother. Zero explained that among them, number 13 was the only remaining relative because he could destroy the whole world. My birth was initially to prepare me for her because Zero's magic was running out. Number 13 found my mother and used his own bloodline to create a child with infinite magic. He intended to give that power to Zero, but my mother discovered this and fled with the child. Zero felt guilty, but I comforted her, saying that thanks to her, I was born. This made Zero laugh, saying I was the most beautiful thing number 13 had left behind. I wanted to know more about my father, and Zero told me he was extremely rational to the point of extremism. Having caused a war in the wizarding world, I recalled the morning when I hesitated to share magic with Hort. Fearing she would die, I decided to become a magic supplier at least until the end of the internship, then asked Zero for training. Zero agreed and began a magic circulation exercise. Just as I was holding her hand to transfer magic, I heard a scream, but Zero didn't let me get distracted, reminding me that I needed to control myself before wanting to help teammates. Meanwhile, Lou Christus sat by the river trying to forget my words about liking her. Hort suddenly appeared behind her and recounted that story. Lou Christus startled and fell into the river, then told her not to talk nonsense. Hort wordly asked if she would run away, because it was said that if a witch received a confession from a student, she would keep her distance. Indeed, Lou Christus had intended to leave, but Hort hugged her and cried, making her promise not to go anywhere until the internship ended. The scream from the hospital made them rush there immediately. They saw Kudo injured and the judge pressing down on the boy rescued from the forest. Hort screamed at him to let go, and he immediately released his grip. The child grabbed a sharp shard and lunged at Lou Christus, but she calmly called out its true name, then bound it to the bed. Kudo suspected it had been sent by the church. Just then, a woman appeared. Lou Christus's former teacher brought lunch for the patients, both the judge and the child. This led Lou Christus to believe the child was merely bait from the church to incite hatred in the village. While they were discussing, the redhead woman taught the Inquisitor manners. He didn't care, just wanting to eliminate his target. When he threatened to strangle her, he was met with the teacher's staff and had to back down. Afterwards, the redhead woman gave him a tour of the village. The mercenary also arrived, and seeing that the attacker was just a child, he did not torture it. Kudo strongly protested, But the mercenary left the interrogation to the priest. As the priest prepared to interrogate the boy, he was suddenly attacked, but luckily dodged. It turned out the child had woken up and heard everything. The priest made him answer in the dark, relying on facial expressions and breathing to distinguish lies, but in the end, they couldn't extract any important information. Lou Christus concluded that high-ranking church officials must be involved, using disaster ruins as bait to secretly incite war, so they needed to be extremely cautious. Hort overheard everything from outside the door, unhappy that the adults were making decisions on their own. She walked around the village, then went to the school and saw the Inquisitor teaching children how to weave baskets. The teacher explained it was just a fish trap, but for Hort, the terrifying memories of him in the sea of fire from years ago flooded back, hurting her and making her determined to keep watch. The children were not afraid of him at all. Hort snorted, asserting that the villagers feared no one. Meanwhile, Kudo received a message from Lily's mouse reporting that the child's transfer to Weenas had been postponed, disappointing him and leading him to decide to take the child out. The boy complained that he could have died a hero and left his name in history, but in the end, they let him continue living. He always believed that fallen witches and beastmen were evil creatures that needed to be eliminated. So when he realized things weren't as he thought, his disappointment grew even larger. I felt both pity and sadness seeing his distorted worldview at such a young age. Then I took him to the church and gave him food prepared by Lily. He ate so heartily that he seemed to become addicted to it. However, when I removed Lily's hat and revealed that he had just eaten meals cooked by a rat, his face turned pale with fear. Lily panicked and repeatedly apologized, making him feel guilty for being rude to her. Afterwards, I took him to a clean, quiet room to rest, but he remained suspicious, thinking that the people in the church were deliberately deceiving him, as he had been taught that witches and fallen beastmen were inherently evil demons. That evening, I excitedly boasted to Zero that I had successfully practiced and could use light magic very effectively, even able to split light into different shapes simultaneously. My friends gathered around and were incredibly excited, each wanting to try it themselves. So they asked to borrow the Luden staff for experimentation, as trying it directly on a person would be too dangerous. Lou Christus agreed without hesitation, because she valued people with aspirations for self-improvement. At this moment, I suddenly confessed that I liked her and even wanted to marry her. The unexpected confession turned the 300-year-old woman into a shy 17-year-old girl for a moment. She thought I was too hasty. I brushed it off, telling her to pretend she hadn't heard anything. But saying was easier than feeling it. It wasn't something that could be unsaid. The church was trying to brainwash the boy and turn him into a weapon against witches. Waking up from a nightmare, the boy was invited by Hort to go fishing with the village children. They went to the east shore, and the boy asked Hort how they could trust a man like the cruel judge. Hort simply said that trust had to be earned bit by bit. She herself didn't entirely trust him, but was willing to give him a chance as long as the boy didn't harm anyone. The boy, already confused, was betrayed by a rumbling stomach, which made everyone laugh. But in his eyes, there seemed to be much contemplation. Elsewhere, Lou Christus was suddenly awakened, startled to find her nephew had appeared in her room out of nowhere. I just wanted to do an experiment and tell you that yesterday, I used the knowledge from my father's book to create a potion. Lou Christus looked but didn't understand a word while her nephew understood everything. Knowing that the writer was brother number 13, Lou Christus immediately understood many things. She was even more surprised that I admitted it was my father, but had no reaction to the greatest villain of the century. I was only interested in the magic potion formula because, if successful, it would restore magic power to the user. That's why I insisted on borrowing the Luden staff. I dripped a drop of the potion into the staff's core, and it immediately shone brightly. Luden then snatched the vial, drank it all, and even danced with joy. Lou Christus touched the staff and discovered the magic power within was as strong as 2 mages, astonishing me, as I had intentionally suppressed its power when making the potion. I was determined to make more potions, but I also frankly said that I would continue to propose to the teacher. Lou Christus was bewildered by my persistence and could only skillfully send me away to focus on her guard duty. At that moment, Kudo was watching the children play by the river with Hort. The cruel judge, witnessing this, recalled his own miserable childhood, living under the abuse of a father who only taught him how to set traps for survival like a hunter. Once, a nobleman came to hire them, father and son, to trap, torture, and hunt down runaway slaves. Afterward, members of the judge's guild killed that nobleman and recruited him into the church's anti-witch army. Returning to the present, he was talking to Hort. She was from the north, her homeland destroyed by witches, Yet, she chose to live in peace with them. As Hort was playing with the children, Hort approached and said that he had fallen in love with the young teacher. Just then, they saw the boy walk down to the river like a zombie. The judge immediately sensed danger and yelled for everyone to get away. Right after, the boy's belly burst open and a huge mouth full of teeth grew out from inside. The judge rushed forward and kicked the monster, intending to punch it to death, but it grew two scythe-like limbs and severed his arm. He then hugged the young teacher tightly and jumped out of the river. Hort tried to use a sleep spell, but the monster was unaffected, perhaps because the boy was completely unconscious. More grotesque mouths continued to sprout from its body. The judge realized that what the boy carried was not just a monster, but a death soldier of the extremist faction. He told everyone to run, to let him face it. But Hort knew he wasn't strong enough and had no weapon. She bravely led the children away so they wouldn't be distracted. As the monster approached, Hort told the judge to hold it tightly so she could cast a spell. The judge risked his life to clamp its two scythe-like limbs, keeping his distance but still getting pierced. By the time Hort finished casting the long spell, the judge had sacrificed a leg. The magic erected 4 stone walls surrounding the monster, but it wasn't enough to contain it. With no other choice, they had to choose to kill both the boy and the monster. The judge rushed forward to shield them with his body. Hort hesitated, but Kudo was decisive, cutting off his own tail for one last summon. The prolonged spell made everyone anxious, while the judge thought he had been abandoned. Fortunately, Kudo retained a shred of humanity and healed his wound. Just when they thought it was over, hundreds of Weenas flytrap-like creatures poured out of the monster's burnt remains, horrifying everyone. The judge had lost too much blood to run. The 2 children had to help him. Suddenly, he realized something, pushed both their heads to the ground, and told them to be quiet. Lou Christus had appeared. The lady invited Luden to a light meal, and he simply had to open his mouth full of teeth and swallow all the unfortunate bugs in one gulp. After the boy's tragic death, Hort, Kudo, and I quietly handled the funeral arrangements. During this time, I bowed my head for a long time, vowing to myself not to let anyone else die unjustly. Amidst that heavy sky, suddenly, the roar of a dragon echoed. From afar, the Dragon King descended upon a fire dragon, carrying a decree from the kingdom of Weenas. This village would soon become a battlefield. All 3 of us were startled, each understanding that the bloody storm was imminent. Without delay, the group rushed back to the village to meet Zero and clarify the situation. Zero calmly welcomed them, stating that if the students did not return as ordered by the academy, they would all be expelled immediately. Kudo and Hort insisted they would stay to help, but Zero merely reiterated that this was a trial they should not interfere with. With a determined face, I interrupted, saying that if I had to choose, I would rather be expelled than abandon the villagers. I believe a mage does not just study to pass exams, but lives to protect. The academy had strict rules that apprentice witches and mages were absolutely forbidden from directly engaging in combat. They were only permitted to set traps and restrain enemies, but not to kill. I thought for a moment, then asserted that if traps were cleverly designed, even one could neutralize 10 enemies. Thus, even an army of thousands could be stopped. My words silenced everyone. For the first time in the conversation, Zero showed a hint of interest. I wasn't just talking. I took out a vial of magical potion from my coat, a shimmering liquid emitting a strange light. This was the result of my research. Zero narrowed his eyes to examine it and immediately admitted that my abilities far exceeded his expectations. She frankly promised that if I truly made a contribution in this battle, not only would I not be expelled, but I could also be recognized for graduation immediately. As soon as she finished speaking, Lou Christus jumped up, excitedly declaring that this would be the graduation project for these students. Zero immediately stopped Lou Christus, emphasizing that this was the Academy's decision and had nothing to do with outsiders. But Lou Christus would not back down. She stood firm, asserting that if the students were summoned back to the school, she would leave too, as she had grown to love this village by now. Lou Christus even pretended to cry, leaving Zero to only hold his head in frustration. Finally, Zero reluctantly promised to discuss a special consideration with the headmaster. Indeed, the news sent out immediately caused a stir. The headmaster read the casualty-free war conclusion plan proposed by Zero. Seeing this as a rare opportunity to put the anti-witch faction in its rightful place while also proving the Academy's righteousness, she sent werewolves to command the church and the magic corps, coordinating with allies to protect the village. Upon her return, the werewolf immediately tried the potion I gave her, Just one drop significantly restored her magic, leaving her unable to hide her astonishment. When asked, she learned the recipe came from a book written by my father. Hearing this, both friends' eyes widened because my father's identity was none other than the notorious wizard number 13 in history. This truth was a heavy shock, leaving everyone in silence for a moment. Meanwhile, Hort invited the judge to the class so the students could thank him. The brutal, growling uncle now stood silently before the children's innocence. Realizing the awkwardness, the teacher quickly put a candy in his mouth, somewhat easing the atmosphere. The small party ended, and when only the two of them were left, the young teacher tried to get closer, her eyes sparkling with belief. She clearly felt the judge's heart stirred, but he turned away silently. Inside, he told himself he was unworthy of love. He went to the inn and coincidentally met the young girl Hort eating there. She teased him, saying the old uncle was still shy about romance. After a few jokes, Hort returned to the main topic of war. She asserted that my plan placed a great deal of responsibility on the judge because his traps would be a crucial link. Although she personally disliked trusting him that much, after he risked his life to save someone, she had to open her heart to give him another chance. That night, the judge sat quietly, his mind in turmoil. Past sins tormented him incessantly. The future was bleak, leaving him unsure of where he belonged. The next day, the villagers set traps en masse, reinforcing all entrances and exits. Zero discussed strategy with the students, while Lou Christus and the mercenary affirmed that if the enemy proved too strong, they would fight to the bitter end. The priest entered, bringing news that the enemy force numbered 10,000, but most were just brainwashed farmers. The anti-witch faction's plot was clearly to force the witches to attack commoners, turning them into villains in the eyes of the world. Lily ran in, calling the mercenary to distribute food. The priest took the opportunity to advise her to evacuate with the villagers, but Lily stubbornly shook her head, insisting she would stay to protect him. Hearing this, the priest was suddenly touched, wishing he had a cute, younger sister like the mouse girl. Lou Christus and the mercenary didn't miss the chance to think inappropriately, and were immediately reprimanded by the priest for their dark minds. While Lily and the mercenary were busy, Lou Christus brought the monster specimen from the boy's stomach for the priest to examine. He frowned as he analyzed it. This creature had the ability to replicate infinitely. If left unchecked, it will engulf the entire continent. The extremists surely had a way to control it before unleashing it, but even many high-ranking officials in the church were unaware. This can only mean that the one behind it all is the mastermind. That evening, the group gathered to thoroughly review the plan. I suddenly stood up, telling Zero to take all my magic if needed. Not for her own benefit, but because she bore the responsibility of bringing peace between witches and humanity. Zero was silent for a moment, then nodded, taking my hand. The amount of magic transferred made her dizzy. Even when fully charged, I seemed to have an infinite surplus. Zero quickly let go before she exploded, then smiled and bestowed upon me the title of Abyss Mage. The group erupted in joy, congratulating me on finally having my own magical title. But the joy didn't last long before Zero warned that if they lost this battle, they would all be expelled. Meanwhile, Lou Christus had left the village at dawn, secretly scouting the enemy forces. The enemy forces approached with formidable power. Not only were they numerous, but also well-equipped, along with fallen beastmen and monsters. As Lou Christus observed, she silently hoped her friend in heaven was watching to witness this dramatic battle. Very quickly, the army drew near the village, but unexpectedly encountered Lily's mice. The plump mice charged, forcing them to change their route. Surprisingly, the new path was riddled with traps everywhere. Looking back, an entire army had been cut to pieces. Painful screams echoed everywhere. Just then, a green rain fell from the sky, healing all the soldiers, quickly restoring their limbs and wounds. When they noticed the inscriptions on the tree trunks, the army realized the witches were merely toying with them. Another group of soldiers was met with fire traps, their bodies scorched but not seriously injured. Only their armor and clothes were singed. The commander immediately understood that the witches had shown mercy, sparing their lives. Thus, he ordered a retreat. However, the real danger still lay with the leader of the entire army, a demon-possessed monster. Upon receiving the report, Zero informed the group that all the ragtag armies had retreated after falling into traps. The students cheered, but Zero immediately reminded them that a greater threat still loomed, the demon-possessed monster and its fallen beasts approaching. I wonder how strong this monster is, and Zero explained that demon-possessed ones are an evolved form of fallen beastmen. They can use magic without incantations, and never tire. The priest and the mercenary immediately vied to finish it. Just then, terrible news arrived. Lily had been captured. The priest panicked and rushed to save her. Lily had fallen into the hands of the demon-possessed creature and its pack of fallen beastmen. They had trapped her in a net, intending to take her back to the village and eat her in front of the villagers as a show of force. The monster laughed heartily, envisioning such a scene, but before they could enact their plan, the steel net was torn apart by the priest's slash, freeing Lily. The fallen beastmen were quickly dealt with by him. The demon-possessed creature lunged to devour Lily, but the priest managed to swing his scythe, severing its arm. Lily fled in terror to hide behind him. The demon-possessed creature was astonished to find that its arm wound could not regenerate, as the scythe had been blessed by the Holy Spirit, becoming its perfect nemesis. The possessed creature was forced to amputate its injured limb, which then immediately regenerated. Just then, the mercenary appeared, taking down multiple mercenaries in just a few moves. But the possessed creature used its power to instantly resurrect its minions, turning them into obedient zombies. The priest immediately told Lily to escape so that he and the tiger could handle the battle. Meanwhile, the rest of the fallen beast folk advanced towards the village gate, but were also eliminated by hidden traps. Recognizing the three young mages as promising ones, their leader mobilized 500 troops to attack them all at once. Just then, the brutal judge appeared, clearing the battlefield in a sea of blood. Zero also quickly arrived with his students to confront them. At her command, magical volleys rained down, forcing the fallen beast folk to hastily seek cover. Though somewhat disheartened by the overwhelming number of enemies, Zero encouraged his students to adapt to the situation. The battle intensified with mercenaries charging forward. The judge threw a magic potion, causing vines to erupt from the ground and constrict the enemies. One managed to escape and attempted to capture the three students, but I filled him with magic, causing him to explode. Hort was not to be outdone. Using a rain of fire to incinerate a group of fallen beast folk, successfully controlling area of effect fire magic for the first time, she was both exhilarated and anxious, fearing she had gone too far. Kudo descended to heal the injured, further confusing the enemy. Just then, a fierce roar echoed from afar. It turned out that the mercenary and the possessed creature had fought their way to the village gate, engaging in a fierce battle, even destroying the wooden fence. The mercenaries severed the monster's arm and slashed its neck, but it immediately recovered. At his wit's end, the mercenary had to summon his witch sister. She warned him to move as soon as she gave the signal. She began chanting, opening a giant blue portal in the sky. As the mercenary retreated, the demonically possessed creature was immediately pulled up by hordes of zombies from the ground, tearing off chunks of flesh. It screamed, then turned into a dried-out skeleton within minutes. The sight horrified me and my friends. The witch canceled the spell, sternly stating that this was why powerful witches and sorcerers could destroy the world if they went astray. The battle ended, and the mercenaries retreated. The principal and allies watched from afar, as delighted as if watching a performance. They even invited the 7 church leaders to join the celebration. Meanwhile, a bishop had incriminated himself upon learning too much about the monsters. He was exposed, despite his attempts to deny it. Suddenly, small monsters rushed out of the forest, causing panic. The bishop boasted that there was a way to protect everyone, but was quickly exposed when he himself became the target. Everything suddenly turned into a joke. It was just an illusion created by Lou Christus to expose his true colors. She forced the bishop to swallow a monster egg, making him tremble in fear until he finally succumbed. Rumors of the battle spread throughout the south, becoming a subject of ridicule. An army of 10,000 could not defeat a single village. That bishop was also cursed for bringing monsters to the south. The principal summoned 3 students and awarded them graduation certificates for their outstanding achievements. The children were stunned, thinking it might be another test. After being reassured, they asked if there were stable jobs after graduation. The principal confidently said that she had prepared suitable positions, a trip to the Forbidden Library in the north, to gather information about catastrophic ruins. The trio returned to the witch village to pack their belongings. Zero gave me my father's book, wishing me a good journey. They said goodbye to everyone and began a new adventure with many challenges awaiting them.